Hello, and welcome to my channel. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and today I have got another recommendation for you. Today I'm going to be recommending audiobooks. Now, before we get any further, go ahead and like and subscribe so that you can get regular notifications for when I put out new content. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So, without any really further ado, let's go ahead and get into this list. These are audiobooks that I not only have listened to within the last year, but I thoroughly enjoyed not only the story, but also the narrator. Now, the first one that I really am going to recommend is if you're looking to get into urban fantasy, go ahead and pick up Dresden Files by Jim Butcher and narrated by James Marsters. He does an absolute phenomenal job, and I've actually heard people say that to them, Marsters is Dresden. I've only listened to Battleground, which is the most latest one on audiobook, but he brought just such a gravitas to it. It is a little bit slower than what I'm used to reading Dresden at, so for that it was kind of a pacing issue, but he still did a fantastic job, and it was really good. The next one we're going to do is we're going to do Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. This is, Red Sister, Holy Sister, and what was the third one? Red Sister, Holy Sister. I've forgotten the book. Anyway, Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence is narrated by, I believe her name is Heather O'Neill. And what I really liked about this is I read the e-version of some of the Book of the Ancestor, and it read kind of flat to me. Certain parts just didn't really hit well with me. Overall, I did like the story. I thought the third book was a little weaker. But then when I switched to the audio, and I started listening to Heather O'Neill's performance, she does some character work with Nona that is super interesting. She plays Nona very flat and very straightforward, almost a little naive. Because she kind of is. Nona just really wants friends. Friendship is everything to Nona. And if you are Nona's friend, she will kill, she will die, she will do whatever it takes to make sure that you stay safe. And Heather does an amazing job making that come through. Our next book is going to be kind of a mix. It's going to be Stormlight Archive and The Wheel of Time. I've only listened to snippets of the Wheel of Time audiobooks, but I have listened to all of the Stormlight books on audio as well. That is Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. If you don't know who these narrators are, do yourself a favor and go pick up something that they've done. They recently just did Daniel Green's audiobook for Breach of Peace. They did the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington. They did, of course, Wheel of Time and Stormlight Archive. They're kind of the granddaddy and grandmama of, the audiobook game. They are just up there. Michael Kramer's got a voice that'll just it won't put you to sleep, but it's like a warm hug. And Kate Redding does such a good job with the female characters. She makes them come alive. Honestly, if you haven't tried any of their work, I can give it the highest of recommendations. Excuse me. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is Raira, I believe is how it's pronounced. Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. The narrator here is Tim Gerard Reynolds. And what Tim does is you really get a sense of, even though it's one man speaking, he imparts personality into each character so well that Royce has his own voice and Hadrian has his own voice, and when they banter, they just come together so well that you just, it is very good. He does the story justice. Honestly, I think he is a better narrator than the story warrants. But I mean, I enjoyed the story, but I enjoyed the narrator even more. And then coming in at my next pick is going to be the First Law Trilogy, narrated by good old Stephen Pacey. He's just got that deep, gravelly voice that really, I mean, Joe Abercrombie wrote great characters, but when it comes to Logan Ninefingers or Glocta. Let's just focus on Glocta when it comes to Stephen Pacey. Glocta's got this thing where he does this inner monologue, body floating down by the docks, which is one of my favorite lines in the books. It's just Glocta always, whenever Glocta thinks that something's going to happen to him, it's body floating down by the docks. It's just, and he does it as this almost lispy whisper. And, Glocta's obviously missing teeth. He's very disfigured and everything like that. But you get a sense that when Pacey is reading the story, he is missing teeth. I can't speak like that. And my only issue with Pacey is there are some sex scenes in the books where I know Abercrombie wrote it, but Pacey goes for it. He gets very enthusiastic. He gives you a performance, and it can be a little hard to listen to sometimes. But other than that, fantastic. Did a great job. Let's see. We've got Powder Mage by Brian Mcclellan. I listened to all three of the original trilogy on audio, and I have now started Of Gods and Powder on audio. And this is narrated by Christian Rodska, I believe the gentleman's name is. Of the 6 books, only 5 of them are narrated by Christian Rodska. And it's for a good reason. I almost didn't pick up the second trilogy, but when I found out what happened, I was okay with it. Basically, Christian, I believe, came down with cancer, and Brian tried to delay the release of the last audiobook so that he could get better. And it got to the point where he couldn't delay the audiobook any further, so they had to go with a new narrator. I am hoping that we might get a re-release, fingers crossed, but right now I haven't listened to the new gentleman. I don't actually know his name. I'll have to look it up because I'm listening to it at the end of this month. But there are times where Christian Rodska does Tamas and what was that name? Maharley. Oh, he does such a good job. And Ben Steik in the new trilogy, he makes all of these characters really come alive. He does a passable female voice as well. But just Rodska does a great job. I really enjoyed it. I did have a minor issue with one character that he did, which was Maharley, where he did a slight accent flip between books. And I just don't know if that was because he was narrating another book and then came back and couldn't quite remember the performance correctly. So that's just a small nitpick. The character doesn't appear a whole lot in the book where I have an issue with it. So that's just a little nitpick. Just you might notice it. So I don't want you coming back to me and saying, hey, you recommended this, and I'm aware of the issue, but I still think he does a fantastic job on making these books come alive. Now, this next one is, it's not quite fantasy per se, but if you count like superheroes and supervillains as part of fantasy, which, it's not that far of a stretch. There's magic and powers and things of that nature in it. It's more general fiction, but it's still really great. And that's going to be Forging Hephaestus by Drew Hayes. Narrated by Amy Landon. And what she does is she just makes Tori come alive. Tori, Ivan, Dr. Mechanical, all of these really interesting characters really come alive. Xerez, Apollo's really good. Lodestar's really cool. Just all of these characters have their own individual voices and personality, and she just injects so much feeling into the story. The book was already amazing. I've read this one and I've listened to it, and I love it. I love it so much. The follow-up book I felt was like a little bloated and wasn't quite as good. But I mean, Forging Hephaestus is good enough to be its own standalone, and I'm gonna continue with the series. Don't let me put you off of the series. I'm doing an awful sales job here. But Forging Hephaestus is absolutely amazing. In fact, anything done by Drew Hayes, go out, buy it, read it, enjoy yourself. You're welcome. I can't tout Drew Hayes enough. He has some of my favorite series. A lot of them aren't really fantasy per se, but they're general fiction into the fantasy and things of that nature. So they're close enough. I'm willing to talk about them here. Next up, I've got Kings of the Wild by Mr. Nicholas Eames. And the series, this narrator is only on this particular book because Bloody Rose is from a female perspective, so has a female narrator. I didn't really enjoy that one as much, but each of these books is a standalone. So the narrator for this one is Jack Harding. And what I really enjoyed is his portrayal of Slowhand in this book. A lot of people either really love Kings of the Wild, or they get told that it's something else that it's not, and get put off of the book. Really what all Kings of the Wild is they took your standard D&D style fantasy, Forgotten Realms, journey across the land, out of shape old man one last final ride, and mixes it with classic rock. That's all it is. It's a good fun time. You've got your front man, you've got your vocalist, you've got your axe player. It's all just, it's fun. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's not grimdark, but it is a good time. I really enjoyed Kings of the Wild. I think, in fact, it was one of like the first 10 audiobooks I ever listened to. It was pretty early on last year when I got into audiobooks, and it was soon after where I think I got recommended it was all over BookTube at the time, so one of the channels recommended it to me, and I picked it up, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The top of this list is going to get my highest recommendation, though, and it's going to surprise some people. That's going to be Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, narrated by Jack Garrett. Now, a lot of people say that Elantris is the weakest Cosmere book because it was the earliest released. And I don't know if I'd say it's the weakest. Mainly because I didn't read it. I listened to it. I loved the narration of that book so much that I went and bought a signed hardcover off of his website. It was that good. The narration was absolutely spot on. Just the pacing, the speed in which the narrator moves through the story, the inflection he puts on certain words. It was such a beautiful, beautiful narration that I just really, really enjoyed it. I do have a couple honorable mentions. Mainly, one of them is going to be just a narrator. I love Nick Podell. If you know Nick Podell, it's probably because he narrated Name of the Wind. And I'm gonna be real, the only reason I even finished Name of the Wind is because I stopped reading it and I listened to Nick Podell narrate it to me. He does an amazing job. His voice is absolutely amazing, and I can't give him more of a recommendation. Also, I am going to recommend you look into Joe Jameson, I believe his name is. He narrated the Greatcoats series by Sebastian de Cassel. That's the only thing I've listened to him, and I really enjoyed his narration style. He's got a great voice. He can do humor really well. He can do frustration really well. He can do squabbling really well between the characters. I'm not going to specifically recommend the Greatcoats, because while I did finish it, I did initially DNF it, and then come back to it later. I I did like the Greatcoats, but that's not what this review is about. I'm just recommending the narrator. And while I'm thinking about it, I did forget another Drew Hayes series. So I've moved on to the honorable mentions, but now we're gonna rewind it and go back to another recommendation, which is pretty high up on my most favorite series ever. I've read it once and listened to the series once. And that's another Drew Hayes series called Superpowers. This is basically, for anybody who cares to watch anime, or has watched anime, it is basically My Hero Academia. I believe Superpowers is first, but I'd have to look into it. They're very similar, though. It's basically college for superheroes in training. And that is narrated by Kyle McCarley. Kyle McCarley, he made those characters come alive for me. Nick, Vince, Alice, Roy, Herschel, Titan, Zero, all of those. Not only is it an amazing series, and I think it's on Kindle Unlimited. If it's not on Kindle Unlimited, it's still fairly cheap to pick up the E version. If you do try and whisper sync year 4, it doesn't whisper sync. I don't think that option's available. I did have to use a credit on Audible to get it, because for some reason I had purchased the Kindle version and it wouldn't let me whisper sync it, even though the other 3 books allowed me to do so. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're looking to kind of read it or listen to it, or use the whisper sync method to save a little bit of money to get both copies. But just Superpowers is, it's so good. Year 4 is a bit long. It is, I think, somewhere around 300 chapters, but like they're like 5-minute chapters, so it's closer to like, I don't know, 150 chapters. It's a very big book. The audiobook I think is like 45 to 55 hours. It's in that range of just super long audiobooks. But that is going to be my audiobook recommendation list, guys. So, like always, stay magical. Peace out. Bye.